Hello and welcome to Cycling Insights, your cycling podcast brought to you by L'Etape Australia by Tour de France. Before we start, don't forget you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or on your favourite podcast platform. Give us a follow and leave us a review. Let's dive into today's show. Hello, welcome to Cycling Insights presented by L'Etape Australia by Tour de France. I'm Matthew Keenan, and in this episode, I'm not joined by Simon Gerrans. We're doing something slightly different. I'm doing a series where I'm interviewing some of the key women within cycling. Not just in the professional road peloton, we're going to look elsewhere as well, but I'm going to kick it off with the woman whose career I've followed since she was in the junior ranks, Tiffany Cromwell. Tiff Cromwell is somebody who now rides for the Canyon SRAM team, and I see her as a real ambassador for women's cycling. But when she started, she was one of the few women, or she was a girl when she started out. She was a young kid picked up from Talent ID, and she was one of the few women out there racing with the men, against the men, and in Tiff's case, often beating them. She's had a really impressive career. She's been a winner of Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, which is the opening race in the first weekend in Belgium. It is a brutal race, often in really tough conditions. She's been fifth at the World Championships, fourth at the Commonwealth Games, and she now has gone from being born and raised in Adelaide, in Stirling, to living in Monaco. It's an extraordinary career, an exceptional lifestyle as well now, as you'll hear shortly. Here she is, Tiff Cromwell. Well, Tiff, thanks for joining me as my first guest in this series as we take a dive inside women's cycling. Not necessarily your professional life, although we will touch on that, but I'm keen to talk to you about your journey into the sport and the role that you play now. And I can remember when you first started, you were somewhat of a trailblazer as one of the few female riders out there often battling it with the men. And now I see you very much as an ambassador for women's cycling. It's been an incredible journey for you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And it's been, a crazy journey when you think back to the days when I started, when, as you say, a little junior in Adelaide, and the early years, just always there training with the boys. There wasn't really the option to train with girls back then. And it's just how it was. Whereas, it's great to see how far the sport's progressed. And, when you're training on the roads, having more women you're seeing out there. And over the period of my career, it's come a long way.
You now ride for the Canyon SRAM team, and I see anybody who rides with that team as an ambassador for women's cycling. Do you get a real sense of pride when you do some of those events with Canyon SRAM and it's all women going out on a bunch ride and you've got a peloton of 80 or 100 people?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really fortunate that we have such supportive partners with the same vision of the team. And that was always the philosophy behind the team when it first started. It was not about just being a professional women's cycling team. It was also about being more accessible and inspiring more women to get on bikes. So, the likes of Rafa do an incredible job with that, like with their Rafa Women's 100 every year, which encourages women all around the world to ride 100 kilometers on this given day and, come together with other women and just get through that challenge as, a sense of achievement that maybe before you're too scared to do or too scared to go join, a big group of guys going out to ride 100K. Even like Canyon and SRAM, they're all, I'd also say, trailblazers in the way that they support women, and not only at the professional level, but also creating products and thinking of like the women's market as a way that so they feel more inclusive within the sport that's for many, many years been a very male-dominated sport.
You've got the kit that probably takes the title as the best looking kit in the professional peloton. It's been really fascinating with the Giro d'Italia, seeing the EF Pro Cycling with their new kit for that and how much debate it has created. And I'm not sure whether men are more obsessed with how their kit looks when they go for a bike ride or women. I think it might be men who are more interested in how they look than women.
I think I'll probably agree with you. Like when it comes to cycling, women just want to feel good on the bike. They want to feel something that they feel comfortable in. They're maybe not so obsessive with everything matching, not afraid to have, let's say, blue shorts and a black jersey. Whereas I think definitely on the men's side, it's become that bit of the, if you look good on the bike, that's all that matters. It doesn't matter how you go. And I think it's in the culture of the sport, have to have the wheels that match the shoes, that match the bike, that match the kit. And yeah, I'd have to agree with you. A little bit more obsessive, whereas, again, we're lucky with Rafa. They do go both ends of the spectrum, create the conversation starter, love it or hate it, and then also, create some really, really beautiful, elegant women's kits that just make women feel good when they go out and ride bikes in the fresh air.
Going back to the beginning, before you got into the cool kit, how did it all start for you? And did you do any other sports before cycling?
Yeah, so I was always very, very sporty since I think I was just a very hyperactive child. When I was really young, I did ballet for about 4 years, I think, and then I moved into basketball, which, if you look at me, you'd wonder why basketball, because I'm not exactly the tallest of people, but it was more in my family. My dad played and then coached, and my mum, I think she also played a little bit. My brothers played. So it was just in the family sport, but although never really went past a domestic level. And then it was through the Talent ID program out of SASI, this SA Sports Institute. They're still doing running really good program, but back then they were kind of going to schools or getting schools to test the kids in sports class with very, very basic tests like a shuttle run, a 20-meter sprint, like a basketball throw, a vertical jump, and then send the results. And they could look at these very basic things and say, okay, you got potential to be a volleyball player or kayaker or cycling. So I got the invitation to go out to the Adelaide Superdrome to try cycling. And obviously people who've been into a velodrome know how daunting that can be. These steep bankings, here's a bike, no brakes, go and ride around, but don't ride too slow because you'll slip down. Um, so that was my introduction, and I did 2 sessions on the track and then went out to SASI and had a VO2 max test in the lab. And then from there, I got invited to join the program with, it was around 10 other kids, all came in through the same avenues. And yeah, that was that. And I remember the very, very first race that we were taken to just after joining the program was the Santos Tour Down Under. So that was my kind of doorway into the sport. Yeah.
I assume then that the VO2 max test went pretty well, given that they invited you to keep coming back. What was it like? What was it like when you went to the first local club races in terms of the environment?
It was, I guess, like any kind of kids sports event. Different to anything I'd expected. When you're used to going to a basketball stadium and there's always lots of action going on, you've got multiple courts, people everywhere, small crowds. Whereas, the local club race, I don't know, I guess you kind of have to find your way. We were lucky because we were this kind of talent ID program, so we always had each other. And so obviously I started on the track and they kept us there. And I can't remember if I did some track races first, but I still remember my first road race, and it was the state championships out at Lobethal. And yeah, it was a cold, wintry morning. And also then it wasn't a team sport. Well, to us, it wasn't a team sport. So it was very, very individual. I had my parents take me, and it was just, I don't know, different. Like, it was nice, just a very relaxed atmosphere. There was like little fires, and then we just went out and raced our bikes. And I think we were all more or less doing individual time trials because we were quite different in our strengths. But I got third in
How'd you
my
go?
race. I got third actually, and so that was my first ever kind of like bronze medal or a medal at a state level. And I was like, oh, because at the start I didn't like the sport so much because on the track I was not that strong because I was teeny. But on that, then things just changed. Like, oh, maybe I like cycling. And yeah, it was a nice, welcoming atmosphere, but it was also, not that big then, I guess you could say.
And what was the dream at that point? Once you got that spark and you got that bronze medal, what was the dream? Where did you think you would end up? And you're now in Monaco.
To be honest, at that point, I had no idea. I was just doing it because I love to do sport. I love to have something to do on the weekends. Yeah, at that point, it's just, okay, I'll try this sport. I like it. We had our little training group and stuff. And I think it wasn't until I started traveling interstate, then and you heard, okay, you can make the Australian team at an under 19 level. Then that was the first kind of dream goal, get to represent Australia and go to like the world championships. But, I was under 15 back then. So it was more a case of, I don't think I really had a dream back then. It was, yeah, I was just doing it just for sport and something to do. And yeah, just because I enjoyed it.
Just doing it and just doing it really, really well. You've had the privilege of representing Australia at World Championships, at the Commonwealth Games, and so on. When you look back at the kid that did that talent ID, can you believe how far it's taken you?
No, not at all. Like, never would have I expected to be on the other side of the world, living here, having my life here. It's been, when I look at all the pathways I've had and the different adventures I've had, I would have never ever guessed that back then. Like, this is, coming from a girl that had never traveled more than to Victoria because my dad was self-employed, so he never could really go on big holidays. So, I'd barely left the state, let alone the country, and now here I am, like, going all around the world. It's, yeah. sometimes when you do take a moment to step back, it's a bit of like a pinch me moment and saying like, wow.
So then what was it like in 2014? You go to the Commonwealth Games in Scotland and you're Australia's number one for the road race. You're the protected rider. What's that sense of responsibility and that pressure and that privilege and that honour like?
It's hard to explain, obviously it's one of the pinnacles of the sport, probably next the World Championships and Olympic Games. But, one, to be there on the start line was pretty amazing, Every 4 years we get that. And for Commonwealth nations, how big the Commonwealth Games are, and seeing a course, and I'm like, yes, I know I can be good on this course. It suits me. It's got lots of corners. It's technical. It's up and down. And but yeah, like you say, having that pressure, it's always daunting. Like we weren't the outright favourites. I think Team England were, but I don't know. I embraced it. Like for me, I never really felt too much pressure. I think because I wasn't the outright favorite, but I was just ready to take it on. I knew we had a good team and a good strategy, and I was just excited. Just really excited to go there and race to represent our country, and be there at my first Commonwealth Games. It was special. And yeah, obviously wanted to go for the win, but then it was also heartbreak at the end to come so close to a medal and miss it by less than a centimetre.
Yeah, fourth. I was about to get onto that. Is that so? It's a brilliant performance, but it's frustratingly close to a medal. And James Tompkins, the great rower from the Awesome Foursome,
Yeah,
he said you never want to finish with an even number. You always want to finish with an odd number
yeah,
because you're either first and you win. But if you finish second, you think I was so close to winning. If you finish third, you think, well, I've got a medal, but I wasn't good enough to win anyway. And if you finish fourth like you did, you've just missed out on a medal. He's
yeah,
got a fair case.
yeah, completely. Like I guess that's the close, because that year was probably consistently one of my strongest years. I went from there fourth, and the World Championships was fifth, and it's like you can feel you're so close to getting that massive breakthrough. But that was the hardest one because it was a sprint, and I knew I probably panicked a little bit in the final because we had like first and second were already gone. Okay, we'd missed that, and then we had three of us, and we got rid of one, and I was really trying to push it. So I had one less person to sprint against, even though I should have just believed in myself and my sprinting ability at the time. And yeah, I remember I was coming up slow, and just almost getting there. And like then the finish line came, and I didn't even have a chance to do a bike throw. And I thought I got it because I heard it was Ashley Moorman, South African rider. She was just beat me, but I heard her kind of say like, thinking she hadn't got it. So I was like, oh, maybe I did get it, even though I think deep down I knew I didn't. But then when I'd heard how close it was, like, as I said, the official measurement was less than 1 centimeter, so that's nothing. Um, yeah, so obviously looking back, like you could go back and say I could have done so many things differently, but that's bike racing, isn't it? It can be cruel, but yeah, for sure, one that a missed opportunity, I guess you could say.
Have you spent more time thinking about the missed opportunities or thinking about the ones that are great successes? And I look at your CV and I see that win at the Omloop Het News Blad, and that just jumps off the page at me as a brilliant win.
Yeah, it depends on my mood, my headspace of what I think about more. Of course, when you're on the high or just thinking about things, then yeah, the memories always stay there. Like I just say on the head news, but that was incredibly special. It was quite unexpected, but it was just one of those days that everything went right. And the same as like with the Giro d'Italia, I've had a couple stage wins there, and again, different scenarios, different ways they came about, and they're things that will always stay with me. But then, when I also look at my career and say, what could have I done better? What could have I, changed? Whether it was my lifestyle, my training, my headspace, my team characteristics, the way I raced on the day, like the confidence in myself versus not having the confidence in myself, like so many things. You can be like, yeah. But then at the same time, you shouldn't dwell too much on the past because you can't change it. You can only affect the future. So it's like, look at that, but then don't get caught up in it, or else you end up more in a hole and you can never get back on top of that. Versus, you learn from that and then put it into your further races and just use it to grow as a rider.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the psychology of elite athletes, and tennis is another great love of mine. And John McEnroe always says that he still loses sleep over the Grand Slams that he lost, and he never really reflects on the ones that he won.
Oh wow, yeah. Like say everybody handles wins and losses differently. They also say you also shouldn't hold on to the win forever because you don't know when the next one will come. But if you focus too much on that one, then maybe another one will never come as well. So, But yeah,
Yeah,
the mental side of
and
sport is insane.
yeah. Yeah, and apparently that's the Serena Williams approach. Her coach was interviewed a couple of years ago and said, "What makes her so successful?" And he says, "Well, when she wins, she just sticks that in her back pocket and goes and chases the next one.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah.
She hardly celebrates it and just
Yeah.
gets on with it. And if she loses, oh well, brush that off and get on with the next one."
Yeah. That's
It's
the
it.
greatest
Yeah,
one
it's
of all time.
yeah, it's really interesting. You're in a position now where you've gone to a one of the key stateswomen really of Australian cycling. We saw at the World Championships this year, you were a late call up because of injuries within the Australian team. How was that for you to get that late call up and then step in as one of the road captains?
Yeah, it was definitely it was exciting at the same time, like, you just had to take it on the plate that was handed to you, Obviously, it's disappointing not to make the team initially, but I also knew it was a super, super hard course and maybe didn't suit me 100%, even though like recently my climbing's got a lot stronger back to where it almost used to be. So I knew, thing is, I know how to just get on, get the job done when I'm asked to do something. Like to come in and step in as a road captain, that's not foreign to me. I do it with my trade team majority of the time. I've done it with the Australian team for the last few major championships. So I think, yeah, it's something that comes a bit more naturally to me, particularly on like once we're in the race side, like to make the calls, to look after everyone. Yeah, it's become second nature. But obviously to then have to be into the headspace, like, okay, I think I got the call up on Wednesday night late, and the race was on the Saturday because they wanted to leave as late as possible for Amanda Spratt, who had a concussion
Mm.
injury. And so, yeah, it was kind of gone from like, okay, done the last race, and who knows what the next race is going to bring, because in today's world with Corona, every race could be your last race. Um, and then it was like from the week before, okay, just be ready just in case, take the Corona test just in case. So I had to have been somewhat of a headspace, but still, when you haven't spent weeks preparing just for this event, it's a bit like, okay. And then when I saw the course and it was as hard as what everybody said, I was like, yeah, it was a touch overwhelming, but I was also calm and I knew my shape was good and I knew, I was there to do a specific job, to help the girls, to captain the team, and end up having quite a strong race, for that particular course. And I think as a team, we had to adapt very quickly, losing such a key rider. And I think everybody took on their role as well. But yeah, it was a bit of a roll of emotions for, from a relaxed start of the week to, okay, got to get ready for World Championships on in 2 days' time.
I thought it was a huge compliment to you that they were able to say, okay, we didn't select you initially, but we know we can rely on you and that you've got the maturity and the experience to step in despite not being selected initially and take this leadership role within the team. So I actually think you should be really proud of that selection coming really, late in the piece.
Yeah, thanks. Like it's also nice, when you can feel that kind of like honor that they have that trust and belief in you, and that I've been able to show that, and it still goes through, even at years when maybe you don't have as strong a showing or you're consistently just doing a support role. So if you look on paper, it might get forgotten about, you know, you in the race. But the fact that, yeah, for Australia to still see that in me, for sure, it's a huge honour and something I always am very grateful for.
You mentioned support role. Within your relationship, Valtteri, your boyfriend, he's a Formula One driver. I think he's won 2 races this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you two go about supporting each other when I imagine there's some points where he's away, comes home, then you go away, you come home, and he goes away?
Yeah. Actually, we've been really fortunate this year. Like, we've only been together this year, but, we have it's super, super great relationship in that we can support ourselves on both sides. And I've been very, very fortunate to have that because, with two elite sports people, it's always tricky to have, two that are trying to be the best in their profession, but to also be able to support one another, because sport can be very selfish and you need things to be really yourself. And we've been lucky with obviously the COVID, that having some time together to just train together. And then with the races, like you say, sure, sometimes it's overlapping where you can't, one's going, the other one's leaving. But yeah, this year it's worked really, really well. I've been fortunate being able to go to a lot of his races. I take my bike, I train when I'm there. He does his racing, so I can be there to support him at the race weekends. And he's also been able to come to a lot of my races. And the team have been really, really welcoming. And, with the girls are laughing in the team because I think it was, which race was it? Flesh on. He was there, we'd just raced. He had just been in Russia and I was at the World. So there, obviously, we couldn't come. And then he came up to that race. So then, racing on Russia, Sochi won the race. And then he's out handing biddens to us in the race. The team puts him to work. But
That's so cool.
yeah, so like I said, it's been a unique year, but we've been so lucky to be able to make the most of it and being able to support each other so much. It could be different another year, like, when we get back to a normal season when they've got the flyways and going to flyways are a little bit trickier, obviously, because, long haul travel takes a lot out of you and I probably can't do that if I'm racing. But while everything's in Europe, it's really easy to manage. So, and I think that's been a big thing that's helped me kind of get my spark and my form back this year.
Motorsport's not something that I've followed particularly closely, but I've always been fascinated by the inner workings of particularly of Formula One because it is the cutting edge. How have you found it going into that inner sanctum of Formula One? And what have you seen as the similarities between that and bike racing?
It's been really interesting, actually. And yeah, they've also been super welcoming, which is nice because, it can be a sport that's like cycling, very closed doors, want to keep people out and don't want to see all the inner workings. But there's a lot of similarities in terms of, like teamwork. You look, although the teamwork is very, very different in terms of, us as a cycling team, we're teammates, we work together, we have all of our staff that work together as one team completely. With them, it's like you have one complete team, you have your engineers, your mechanics, and everything like this, and you all work together, both sides of the garage, but at the same time, the two drivers are also their teammates, but they want to beat each other. So that's one thing that you've got a lot of similarities with working together with, sharing information, looking at every little minute detail, which is what we are always looking in cycling, like looking, for the race strategy, working together, what's the best strategy to make the team win. But then you obviously have that huge difference with you're trying to beat each other. But it's been interesting, those aspects and the technology side. Like even Valtteri will say, look at the bike and we'll always say something isn't that aerodynamic. And I'm like, I told they're meant to be like the fastest bikes is that. And you can always see something that could be improved because, they're at like the top of
Yeah.
things, the minute detail to make it 0.01 of a second faster or something versus,
And a slightly bigger budget, perhaps?
yeah, just a slightly bigger budget, but but yeah, it's and the characteristics of there on the pump up of getting to the start of the race, that's always interesting. Like it's bit by bit, it starts as a chilled morning and then gets more busy until you're on that start line. Same as in cycling, start relax, you kind of have a laugh with your teammates and get onto that start line. That's like, okay, it's game time, we got to go. But yeah, so it's been an interesting world to get a bigger insight into, and it's also nice, to be able to kind of see what they're doing and compare it with the cycling and see if there's things that we can do differently, on our side, and yeah.
That team dynamic that you touched on, that is one part that I see is completely different. I
Yeah.
imagine you get great joy out of seeing your teammates win, possibly more now than when you actually win yourself. Whereas you look at Formula One, and I think the first rival, when I look at it from the outside, the number one rival initially is your teammate, and then it's everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. Because yeah, and that's I remember, if you try to explain like our sport to like a motorsport person, they're like, huh? Whereas yeah, I'm like, yeah, we're teammates, we like each other. But yeah, that's just how it is because I think the only measure you can have is your teammate because that's the only person in the same car as you. And for them, it's so much machine driven. Like for us, cycling, the machine is part of it, but it's also we're our engine. We're the ones that have to do the work. For them, they're so reliant on the car performing and for them to make the car perform in the best way. And so that's why it is. It's, you want to beat your teammate because you could say you can beat everybody else, but your car might be better, your car might not be better. It depends on how good the team as a whole is, but there is only one person that has the exact same setup, or not setup, but exact same car as what you do.
Mm.
And then it's, as I said, there's all these smaller details with the setup that you work with your side, the different tires, and then lots of tiny little things in the car that obviously I don't understand about that you make to suit your driving style to be the best for that course or that track, from the qualifying to the race, and that your teammate has to do the same, and it's who can do that better and then who can work the strategy better within the team's overall strategy. And yeah, it's fascinating. And like you
Yeah,
say, of course, we always want to be on the upper side of the garage of
yeah.
the winning side, but
But
I think every team's different of the kind of respect they have between each other. Some is always going to be a stronger teammate than the other, but yeah, it also just makes you more competitive, more hungry to try and beat your teammate.
the one thing that I look at that we can absolutely learn from F1 is the broadcast.
Yeah.
So there was a great moment just a few weeks ago with Danny Ricciardo, and he got a 5-second penalty. And the garage said to him, "Daniel, you'll have a 5-second penalty." And he said, "Okay, I'll drive faster." And so we get that insight. What I would love to have access to the communication between you and your team car, but I'm tipping Tiff, we might need an 8-second delay every now and then for some of the language.
Yeah, completely. And F1 have that. I tell you, when you see the stuff comes up, because I get the headphones, so I know when they've said stuff, and then maybe a few minutes later you'll get like what the radio message was. But that, yeah, from that side of things, there's so much cycling and so many sports could learn. They do a really, really good job of creating a fantastic package, giving a lot of information to the fans without it being too much, because obviously all the teams can see the same footage. They know a lot of
Mm.
things that are going on. But yeah, and just the management of, they have one big umbrella company like FIA that run everything, versus cycling, it's so segregated into so many different race organizations. And they seem to work better like that to create this amazing championship that travels around like a big circus together as one. Whereas we're quite split, whereas, you got your classics, you got your tours, you got this. But yeah, it'd be cool to have a lot more insight for the
Is
fans.
is there an opportunity? Is there an opportunity then there for women's cycling to perhaps lead the way to beat the men to it and have the women's teams all come together, the women's peloton come together and say, okay, we're going to work together. We're going to try and grow this sport on the media platform, access to race radio for the broadcast.
I think absolutely, it'd all be within its limits. But I always say, like, so many ideas. I think the women are more open to it because we're a younger sport. We know we're still trying to get more interest into the sport, get more sponsors, get more money into the sport. So I think we're much more open to those sorts of things. Whereas I think for the men, because it is such an old sport, and there is a lot more money in the sport, that they're so much more protective of everything. So I think, why not? Like, okay, at the best of times, the radios aren't fantastic, but if you could, get the links into just a tiny bit, give the TV broadcast access, it could make it more interesting for the fans. Because, like yourself as a commentator, you need to try to explain to them what's the inner workings of like the teamwork. And if people can also hear some of the radio messages, I'm sure that could be very, very interesting and insightful, and just add a whole nother
Yeah,
like element to the sport.
element. Yeah, and it'd be great to so it has to be on delay. You would have to have it on delay. So, you've launched an attack and you're off on the move, and then we can play the audio from 5 minutes ago about the plan for
Yeah,
that attack to happen. There'd have to be some sort of agreement. But I love the idea of hearing from the commentator a little bit less and actually hearing from you in the
yeah,
peloton. I'd,
definitely.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that topic, how much longer do you think you have left in the peloton? What are your ambitions still in cycling?
Still have a few ambitions, As I said, I've represented Australia at World Championships, Commonwealth Games level, but I am still missing the Olympic Games level. So that's still a goal. And obviously, with Tokyo now being next year, that's still a big goal that I'd love to be able to do before I end my career. And for now, kind of my short term vision is 2 more years in the sport. I still feel I have more to give. And, I've definitely got my love back, because there was maybe a couple of years there where I was a bit so, but yeah, so obviously with Australia Wollongong World Championships, it'd be fantastic to be able to end my career in Australia at the World Championship level. But yeah, we have to see what the future brings. But yeah, definitely still a couple more years, yeah, if I can.
Good. And then after cycling?
I always have so many ideas, and then yeah, lots of different things, boutique travel agency, or maybe, like with cycling adventures and all sorts of things. Or I've also always had a love of fashion and design, so maybe something in the design element. Yeah, the world is the oyster, as they say.
It is, and with the discipline that you've applied to your cycling career, if that flows through post cycling, I'm confident it's going to be a huge success. Tiff, I've loved having the privilege of commentating on most of your career, and I've really enjoyed the chat.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great to chat.
Well, I really enjoyed that chat with Tiff Cromwell. I hope you did as well. She's somebody that when she does retire, I'm sure that she'll still be involved in cycling. And I hope she gets her wish and she gets to finish her career with representing Australia once again at the World Championships in Wollongong in just a couple of years. Make sure that you tell your friends all about the podcast, to encourage particularly the women to have a listen to it and get some inspiration from Tiff Cromwell. And I hope to see you out on the road soon. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Until next time, bye for now. Thanks for listening to Cycling Insights, brought to you by L'Etape Australia by Tour de France. To learn more about the event or to register, visit letapeaustralia.com. It's LETAPE Australia.com. letapeaustralia.com. We'll see you on the road.